Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here at Bhagavat Sravana. This is our weekly program for devotees. And I'm happy to have you all here. This is, I think, everybody's outside of Sangha. But we're super happy that you guys are here. And we're super happy to have Vilasa speaking. Today he's going to be speaking on encountering our limitations and reflections on failure and disappointment. So he'll speak for the next hour, and then we'll have arti, and then we'll have lunch. And Vilasa is originally from South Africa and is a disciple of Kadambakanda Maharaj. And came to New York how many years ago?
Almost 5 years ago.
Almost 5 years ago. Okay, wow. Came to New York almost 5 years ago and has been serving as part of the Brooklyn Temple Project. Kadambakanda Swami asked him to do that, and he's now serving as the vice president for the Brooklyn Temple. So and the Brooklyn Temple is just really growing and expanding in a beautiful way. So his service is really, really meaningful and important. And this is his wife, Sukanti Karangi. And yeah, thank you so much.
So as promised, the focus today is a little bit of meditation on limitations. So when you get these opportunities to speak, it's always easiest to speak about something that you're currently thinking about, from your own experience, makes it the most relevant. So that's the amazing thing with spiritual knowledge, is that the true test or the power of spiritual knowledge is when you start seeing it applied in our daily lives. It really becomes very alive. So that's the amazing thing with the living spiritual tradition, is that the knowledge we get is supposed to become visible to us as we go through our daily lives. It's not that there's spirituality on one side and life on the other side. The two things are supposed to really be much interfused with one another. Our spiritual practice is supposed to go into our life, and as we go through our lives, we can see it there. So, in my service that I do at the Brooklyn Temple, we also have a lot of young people specifically. Now, it's not that I'm an old person, but I'm at that stage now where there are people that are younger than me. People that are, that are that I've gone through certain phases of life that, I'm seeing now a lot of young people still have to really think about. So it's interesting in being in the position of guiding younger people. At least in the temple, a lot of people who just finish high school or just in their early 20s, trying to figure out what to do with their lives. And nowadays it's not really something that's limited to your early 20s. I mean, some people, you can be in your late 40s and you can still be figuring out what to do with your life. And then at a certain later point in life when you retire, then you're also thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do with my life? So it's something that comes to us again and again, where we have to consider, well, what exactly is it that we want to do with our lives? And it is really something we'll face regularly. So, in the modern world, there's a lot is made about the idea of our potential. There's a lot of, one could say, propaganda around how each of us, we have unlimited potential to be fulfilled. And then a big part of inspirational talks and videos you can watch and messages to the youth, an inspirational message to the youth is that you have unlimited potential. And it's just this amazing thing that we make about potential, and we celebrate how much potential each of us have, and how we celebrate whenever we can destroy something or remove an obstacle that is seen to be inhibiting someone from living up to their full potential. And it's like, it's the most amazing thing you can do for someone, is to somehow help them realize their potential, and somehow, and that is what it's all about, this the dream. And in New York City, no place like anywhere else do you feel that. People come in here with their eyes hungry with what the potential of New York City that they can achieve here. And like all things in life, nothing is absolutely good, and also nothing is unlimited. So potential is an interesting thing, because the fascinating thing with potential is that it is true, each of us, we have potential that is undeniable. We each, specifically as we stand, as I'm saying, whether you're standing at the beginning of your life or at the beginning of a certain phase of your life, each phase, the future always has within it some potential, something that you can do with it. But the amazing thing with potential is that it is actually, in itself not really worth anything unless it is actualized. Your potential is worth nothing. Potential is just, it's the potential for worth, but in itself it has no guarantees. You have not done anything in it. It is in itself not really something to be celebrated. It is something to be grateful for. But the interesting thing with potential is it has to be spent. And as you start spending your potential, you will also see that your potential starts to decrease, ironically enough. That, for example, if you are unmarried, you look at the world, there's more than 3 billion people of the opposite sex out there to potentially be, the one you're going to marry. So there's so much potential. But once you get married, then it all evaporates. Then that potential is reduced. Now it's done. Now it's like the potential is less. So similar thing with life is that potential is meant to ultimately actually be reduced. Because once you actualize something, it means the potential now disappears, and now it becomes crystallized into something specific. So potential is in itself not this glorious thing. Potential only has worth actually when we make something of it. And as you start to make something of potential, it will actually start to become more limited. So limitation is not this bad thing that as I'm saying, in a culture now in which freedom and potential is sort of exalted as these most absolute wonderful things, then limitations are seen to be bad. So you can see the rhetoric in the modern world. If you look at anything that looks like it will be somehow limiting anyone, and specifically in America, then immediately there will be so much backlash and push against it as something that is either seen to be archaic or unhealthy or repressive. Like if you look at something like censorship laws, if someone says, what was the other thing I saw, like if you say if they censor a book in a school, there's some parents complain that there's a book and this book contains things that people don't appreciate or that they say it's not good for kids, and that someone says, okay, we're going to ban it in the school, then immediately there will be so much backlash. So people would say that this is unhealthy. You'll be limiting now children and the potential of what they can experience. So in principle, we have this attitude that limitation is this bad thing one has to be very careful about, and that it somehow goes against freedom. But as I'm saying, your potential is only going to be, if you spend your potential wisely, it means that you're going to start embracing certain limitations. Okay? Because limitations are ultimately what define us. Yeah? If you have something like values, for example, your values are actually things that limit you. It limits you from doing certain things and not doing other things. So a lot of what we would consider character or concrete things or your actual personality are all limitations that you either voluntarily or just sort of how you are. That's how you define. Like if you draw a person, for example, the boundaries, there can be no question of being anything if there's no limitations. Otherwise, you would just be part of everything else, isn't it? So limitation is then something that is not necessarily bad. It is something that is just as useful as potential. But in the modern world, something that is often underappreciated, resisted, resented, and not properly understood what the function of these limitations are. So potential then, as we're saying, it is similar if you have the experience of, if you ever had the experience of having, most of us probably here hasn't, me and Gopal definitely had to go through the process of getting through immigration into the US, coming to the point where you get your immigration sorted out. And that day when you get your green card or you get your work permit, it's this amazing experience. And you're like, wow, it takes so much money, takes so much effort, takes so much mercy from Jayanta, who is my immigration lawyer, interestingly enough, and bring you to this point. And then you come, and that day comes, and then you get your work permit in the mail, and you open, and you're like, and you have it, and you're like, oh my, this is amazing. And then you want to celebrate. But what do you really celebrate? It doesn't mean you have a job. It doesn't mean you have any money. All that you have is just the opportunity that in the future you could be legally employed. And it's fascinating how a big step that is, but in the end, it's not really much. Because there is, there's 300 million people in the US and they all have their work permit, and it doesn't necessarily mean that, the potential to work is going to solve all your problems. So again, it is making things physical, manifestation is a limitation of potential. So what we're going to do now is a meditation on limitation and seeing it from a spiritual perspective, seeing how it is the other side of the coin, and these two things have to go together. Right? Potential and limitation, they work together to actually become what your life is. And it's not just, you have to have both of them to basically be anything. As we said here, just like the outlines of the human form, the outlines of your life, ultimately, are going to be determined by your limitations. And you will see that when you have this experience where you are trying to figure out what to do with your life, to be in that condition where you're not sure of what to do with your life, which means you're not sure to do with what the potential you have. So many options that you're not sure what to do, whether it's as same as the beginning of your life or at the beginning of the next phase of life, then that condition is actually something that in the Bhagavad Gita that is considered, that is, we are warned against that position. The position where you are in doubt or uncertainty about what to do. It's something that naturally happens to us. It's not something to be completely avoided, but it is something that needs to be addressed. Uncertainty is a position in which we are actually very vulnerable. Because now the problem is with life is that even if you have a lot of potential, if you just sit around and you wait too long, then your potential will start to decrease. Even if you don't do anything bad, you're not doing anything bad, you're just sitting and doing nothing, then automatically your options are starting to decrease. Life forces you to do something with the time that you have. It's just like a battery, like if you have your phone, and even if you don't use it, you just leave it. After a day or two, it's going to be dead. even if nothing is done with it, because the potential will just start to decrease. So when life forces us to really make some decisions about what to do, and as we know, the Bhagavad Gita is a text that really deals to a large part. The focus is on trying to guide us in figuring out what should we do with our lives. The Bhagavad Gita is very much in, it's called, the focus is on practice. What the decisions that we have to make as we confront the realities of the world. And that's what the text is about. But trying to connect that with the spiritual vision. So that's why a perennially relevant text. And we're going to pull some meditations from the Bhagavad Gita that help us see how, when we are faced with this problem of trying to figure out what should we do, it is not simply in our potential that we will find the answer, but it is also in looking at our limitations that really help us actually get clarity about what is the best thing for me to do with my time. What can I do and what can I not actually do? And what is the best direction for me forward? So the big thing that we understand from the Bhagavad Gita perspective, the spiritual perspective, is that the thing that drives us in this world, ultimately, the most powerful force that carries us through our journey through this world, is naturally our desire. Desire is a massive focus in the Bhagavad Gita, because it's considered to be something that is very, it is the first, one could say, the first action or the natural function of the soul is to desire. And that desire, wherever that desire is directed, that is the main force that will pull you forward, that will sort of direct you in your course of your life. But we all enter into this world with a lot of desires, natural desires, and all of us, we have high hopes and dreams. But it is therefore one of the first things that we encounter, the first limiting experience that in itself has great potential for wisdom, is disappointment. Disappointment. In this world, it is natural, regardless of what your potential is. We all have different karma, as we could say. We all have different levels of intelligence, or money, or strength, or capacity, whatever it is. But regardless of what your power is, regardless of how much you are blessed with, what your capacity is, disappointment is going to be inevitable for all of us. Because there are certain, we can start off with the great limits that are imposed on each and every one of us, which is the limitation of death. That is just, so whatever you are, at the end, you can draw a line, and we all have that same line that we face at the end. And naturally, who wants that? I mean, that is something that, even if you have built up an amazing life, so many things, your life is full with all these wonderful things that you like, that you're very happy with, then the reality of death is always there. Disappointment is inevitable to a certain extent. But then there's also the smaller disappointments that we face as we grow up. So many disappointments where we realize that you will not always get what you want. And life will not always turn out like you wanted it to turn out. And that is just true for all of us. A great limitation, really, that is imposed upon us. And so as we grow up as children, we see a big part of becoming mature as a human being is when you start being able to deal with disappointment in a way that does not disrupt you or throw your whole life into turmoil, or force you to go, I could say, to act out your disappointment on other people or on yourself and the people close to you. So disappointment is something that, as we grow older and we become more mature, we start being able to deal with disappointment, one could say, in a little bit more of a detached way. And in one sense, because we embrace it, we understand that I can't really fight against it too much. Certain things just inevitably going to be there. Certain loss or just things not being how I wanted it to be. And to accept that. So accepting that inevitable disappointment is a big stage, coming to the point of knowledge, and coming also to the point of understanding what does the world really offer me. The world is not designed to fulfill all our desires. That is the one thing. That is, one could say, the first myth that we, most of us, when we are born, we have this assumption that that's sort of what the world is supposed to be like. But very soon, very soon, we start to realize that it's not exactly like that. The world, that's not really what the function of the world is. And that is the first principle of spiritual knowledge, is to understand that the world has a purpose. The world is not without purpose. But the purpose of the world is not to fulfill every single one of your hopes and desires. That's not what the world is meant for. Because if that's what the world is supposed to be, then the world is very badly designed. Because then there's definitely something wrong. But it's not what the world is made for. The world is made for one would much rather say that the world gives us the opportunity to learn and to grow and to become something else than what we are. But it doesn't mean that the unfulfillment of desires or the frustration of certain desires or the disappointment of certain desires is an inevitable part of that journey. And disappointment, in terms of what we can get from it, it does not just, it's in its highest function, it's not that it just makes us unhappy, makes us miserable. In its highest function, it clarifies to us that the driving force behind our life, the main thing we organize our life around, cannot be just your personal preference, your personal desire. And therefore, it is disappointment oftentimes that brings us the spiritual path. That is oftentimes what drives us. The majority of people come to spiritual life after or by, in great part, because being motivated by the disappointments that we've experienced, that have made us reflect that there must be more to life than just trying to fulfill my desires, because it doesn't really work. And as we say, there's two kinds of disappointment. There's the disappointment in not getting what you want, or the disappointment in getting what you want and realizing that it isn't actually satisfying you. So both those experiences are what brings us to look for something more. Then as we start to, when we take that next step, as I'm saying, we take that next step up in the evolution of our consciousness, and we go to a certain extent above personal desire, it is then that we come to the second point. A second kind of limitation, or a second kind of motivation, one could say, is that of duty. So duty is really a higher platform that we stand upon, that we try to live our life based on. And duty is in itself also a form of limitation that is imposed upon our life. But this time, voluntarily embraced, voluntarily embracing these limitations. So duty and values are all things that ultimately limit us, limit in what we can do. But the limitation of duty is naturally just like if you think of the barrel of a gun. In a gun, there's a big explosion. So that explosion provides a certain amount of energy. But that energy is only powerful because of the fact that you have a barrel that is completely constricted, that constricts the movement of that bullet and that directs it in one specific direction. Otherwise, the amount of explosives that are in a bullet is comparatively little. Like we can take that explosive, we can take it out, we can light it on fire right there, nothing will happen. You can't make a bomb with the explosives that are in one bullet. It's very little. You can take a bullet and you can throw it into the fire. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but we've done it before. At a party, whatever, people will throw a bullet in the fire. It's like a very South African thing to do. And then the bullet will explode. It just looks like a firecracker. Nothing happens. The top of the bullet, it just pops off. It is only when that bullet is in a gun, in a barrel, and when that explosion happens then, and all that energy that is released, it forces that bullet to go in a very specific direction. Then that bullet can kill people. Then that bullet can kill you. But without the barrel, that bullet is useless. So similarly, duty is those kind of limitations that are highly focused, very constricted, but it allows the force of your life, the potential that you have, to become much more powerfully manifested. And that's what makes whatever you have. It is when we adopt duty, that is what allows us to really become something more than we would if we are simply running around trying to chase after our personal desires. So then we see here a central theme of the Bhagavad Gita, so many verses on duty, but probably one of the most basic, simple ones. That Krishna says, perform your duty equipoise, O Arjuna, abandoning all attachment to success or failure. Such equanimity is called yoga. So that form of duty is something that oftentimes we see in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna exhorts Arjuna to come to that platform. And that is the first, I would say, the first step to take. And really something we can take shelter of again and again in our life. Whenever we have this experience where we are confused or unsure of what we should do, unsure of what's the best thing for us to do, it is at that point that asking the question, okay, well, what are my duties? Can provide a lot of clarity in that moment. It brings a lot of, and it helps a lot to try to sift through the various options that we have. So, disappointment and duty then, two forms of limitation that really clarify to us and help us to see where our energy is best directed. However, once we embrace a life of duty, and we start to apply duties in our life, and we start to take these duties seriously, we will start to understand that if you read the Bhagavad Gita, you'll see also Krishna makes this whole principle of your duty, but even duty, there are certain duties that are very universal. It is easily understood and easily embraced. For example, the duty to be honest. And it's something that, it's something very simple and very, very powerful, but it's always there with us. To not cause harm to others. It's like there's these certain duties that are just there for everyone, that all of us have. It's part of being sort of a human, a good human. It's universal, it's there. But then duty gets a little more specific, because there's certain duties that we have to accept or not. As I'm saying, for example, once you start thinking about things like marriage, occupation, career, your role in society, then it becomes very specific. And at that point, again, we can start to wonder, just like we see at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, that was Arjuna's specific point. Arjuna himself, a highly enlightened being, highly enlightened person, but somehow even for him, he came to that point where it's not that he doubted that life should be lived based on duty, but he just didn't understand what his duty was. He came sometimes to a point where, on the one hand, he had his family that he naturally didn't want to fight against, but on the other hand, he had his duty to perform, and then sometimes our duties collide, and we're just not sure what exactly it is that we should do. For many of us, we see that we will sometimes in life, certain opportunities will come our way, and we're not really sure if this is what we're supposed to be doing. At some point, you take up responsibility in a community of, say, leadership. But you're not really sure, but are you a leader? Because it's not that everyone is a leader. It's not that everyone is supposed to necessarily be, leaders. So, another form of limitation that we experience in life that helps us in figuring out what exactly is our duty. Not that this is the only one, but it is a big one. Is failure. Failure, the experience of failing. So even when we embrace duties, we will oftentimes experience that we fall short and we fail. We're just not able to live up to what it is. For example, if you're a parent, you have a child, then you have, naturally, the duties that you have toward the child is there. But sometimes you will fail in those duties. You will lose your temper, and you will, be mean to your kids. You will yell at them unfairly. Or sometimes you can't protect them from certain harm that comes their way. In marriage, in a community, so many forms, all the various duties that we have in life, we all will undergo certain failure. And failure, again, is an experience of our personal limitation. We couldn't live up to the demands of what is made of us. And it again and again happens to us. And failure is a perennial experience, and it is immensely powerful. Srila Prabhupada used to say that failure is the pillar of success, meaning that failure is not something to be feared. It is also not something that you can expect to avoid. The only way you can avoid failure entirely is if you never attempt to do anything. That is the only way that you can fail. So trying to avoid failure as if it inherited something bad, that's not going to help. But learning from failure and seeing what we can gain from failure is a big part of becoming mature and also in growing ultimately to our full potential. So there's a few things that failure teaches. Failure can show us where to improve. Failure can also show us where our energy is sometimes not properly directed. We saw with Srila Prabhupada, he tried many, many different things, and not all of them worked. He started his preaching program in Jhansi, and it just flopped. In actual fact, most of what he did in India before he came to America just didn't work. As I was listening to a class the other day, and he was saying how, truth be told, actually it wasn't a class, it was a quote that someone sent me. Let's see if I can pull it up. Where he said, so Robert said, when I left India, I promised I'll never come back here. I was reluctant to do anything here. But still, I thought, at least in Mayapur, let me try something. There are some Vaishnavas, so many residents in Mayapur, Vrindavan. But still, I promised that I'll never come again back here. That was my promise. But at the end, Krishna wanted. That was okay. But at that point, I was quite disgusted. Still, I am disgusted. Meaning that Prabhupada's point was he experienced a lot of failure in his attempts to do anything in India. It didn't work. Again and again. It just failed. And that's what ultimately pushed him to come to America. So failure is not that it's bad, it clarifies things for us. It clarifies sometimes we try to do something and you give it your best shot and then you fail. And that failure is a way that you can see, well, this is perhaps not the best way for me to spend my energy. I think the verse that we see in the Bhagavad Gita is where Krishna exhorts us. He warns us that it is very dangerous to perform someone else's duty. It's something that we will again and again experience, meaning that if we take up certain positions in life, which is not really who we are, it doesn't really work for us. As I'm saying, sometimes you take up a position of leadership, and it just doesn't work. Because not everybody can lead, has the capacity to lead, or specific kinds of leadership. Or we think of ourselves, for example, you see sometimes you think, okay, you want to be a musician, and you try, and at a certain point, after repeated failure, you realize, well, maybe I'm just not a musician. Maybe I'm just not a professional musician. It's not really working out for me. I have to go do something else. So Krishna again and again he says this, you have to be very careful. You have to be very, very careful in performing someone else's duty. So duties, and the Bhagavad Gita explains that what duty is, the specific duties that you take up in life, it is based on our specific nature, specific conditioning. We all have a certain kind of nature and natural instincts and capacities. And you have to take up duties that are sort of corresponding with that. You see, I have a friend who said how his father used to be, his father was a mason. And he's very good at what he does. And his father, he made a good wage working as a mason. Always had work because he was well known for doing excellent work. But at a certain point, he decided that he didn't want to work for someone else anymore. He wanted to start his own business, become a contractor and work for himself. Start to run a business and have other people work for him. And that period of time in which he did that, after doing that for about 5 or 6 years, that's at the point where then it ended up being so stressful for him to be able to run a business, because he just actually wasn't good at running a business. There's a big difference between being a mason and running a business. Is not everyone can run a business. It's like a very specific kind of attitude and skill set that you have. And it caused so much financial difficulties and stress, put so much stress on his family. It was, he remembers that was the time in his life growing up, the most difficult time, when his dad was like running his own business. And when he stopped running that business and he just sort of abandoned it and just worked again, then immediately things became so much better. Because so much stress was relieved from his father and then affected the whole house. So the point is that's why Krishna warns us. Performing someone else's duty, we have to be very careful in taking up certain positions because it has to be something that is within our capacity and also something that is accurately motivated. And oftentimes we try to do certain things not really because we like doing the thing, but because we think we would like the benefits that come from it. You know? And sometimes people think, oh, I would like to be famous. But there's many people who become famous and then they realize they don't actually like being famous. You know? Like it's not so much fun to be famous. Maybe sometimes people regret it. They regret becoming famous because they can't deal with the pressure and the stress of and the invasion of privacy. So therefore Krishna again and again exhorts us that you have to be careful of deciding what it is you're going to spend your life on. What are the commitments that you're going to make, the things you're going to take up on. Because you have to do those things that are in harmony with your condition and who you are, what your capacity is. And failure is one of the ways in which we can narrow down what are the things that we're supposed to do and what are the things we're not supposed to do. And in this way it becomes a valuable experience for us. So this thing is a third kind of limitation that really helps us in figuring out what we should do. Now, after speaking so much about limitation, I think it's important to end off on a positive note. Because even though, as I said, limitations are valuable, they're not necessarily so enjoyable. You know? It's almost more of just the realities of living in this world. Just like, death is inevitable, but it doesn't mean it's going to be a lot of fun and it's relishable. But it's a part of being a mature person is embracing it and understanding it's part of what's happening. So similarly, limitations are like that. They're not bad, they're not our enemies, but they're there to teach us something. They're there to help us give shape to our life, help us narrow down our options. But at the end, it's not really natural for us. The soul, by nature, does not like to be limited. But therefore we see the core message of the Bhagavad Gita and the conclusion is what Krishna explains to us, that the essence of all his instructions is engaging your mind, always in thinking of him, becoming his devotee, offering obeisances to him and worshipping him. And this absorption in him, surely you will attain him. So that's the amazing positive message then of the Bhagavad Gita, that when it comes to our spiritual duty, and our spiritual practices, which is the real goal, whatever we're doing in this life, we're trying to get connected and absorbed in God consciousness. It is there that we will experience the freedom from limitation, as we already mentioned. Freedom from limitation cannot be experienced on the material platform, and it is inevitably there. But it is in that inner experience of worship, becoming directed and focused on Krishna. It is there that we will really be able to overcome a lot of limitations. And it is those duties that can ultimately not be stopped or blocked by material obstacles. And it is that fascinating dual part of life, where on the one hand we're trying to deal with life, with our material situation, trying to figure out what to do with the time we have in this world, but at the same time we have our private life, our relationship with Krishna, part of our inner life, part of our life of worship. And in there, we are trying to overcome the obstacles and limitations. And in a practical sense, then, it is there that we will experience transcendence in its full-fledged capacity. But externally, there's transcendence, even if we become transcendental, the limitations of the external world there have their specific purpose. And it is not there that full freedom from limitation should be expected nor be sought after. Okay, so these are some ideas on the question of limitations and how they relate to our life. So I'd like to ask if there are any questions, or even if there's no questions, it's also nice if there's some reflections from you guys. Yes, ma'am.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I have one question on desire.
Yeah.
So there's a desire of the soul, and then there's material desires.
Yeah.
Is that, but those two aren't necessarily the same thing, right? So there's the concept of nakshatras, so which is the 27 fundamental
Yes.
desires, which is not necessarily the same thing as the desire of having a house or a car. So we don't really know when we desire things. It's not really the desire of the soul, correct?
Well, that's an interesting question. So we would say that in our present stage, all our desires are mixed up. So the soul in this world, the soul is almost, it's like bound and connected with matter. So all desire ultimately originates from the soul. It is because there is a soul, then there is desire. There is only desire where there is life. So there's no desire without the soul. But what happens is that because the consciousness now, the soul, is bound up to the material body, due to the false ego, it is the knot in the heart, which is that the soul is bound. So all our conscious energy or awareness is directed into this world through this body. So the soul is animating it, and the soul is connected to it because the soul is experiencing it. So then the soul's desiring capacity is also filtered through the body. And therefore, all our what we call material desires are the desires that are all revolving around this specific body. But it doesn't just mean food or a car, it means status, so many subtle things, but they're all actually still material because they're connecting to the body. So, the process then in spiritual life is to, one could say, filter through and purify desire. So just like there's, if you have gold, you're not obtaining gold in its pure form in the world. You get it in a big piece of rock, but that piece of rock has to be crushed down, and then it is heated to a high degree, and then the gold melts, and then in that way the pure gold is extracted. So similarly, even within us right now, there is pure spiritual desire. We have desires that's still there, to a greater or lesser extent, which is the natural desire of the soul. When the soul is not connected with the material body, its natural desire is simply to serve God, to have that relationship with God. So that desire is also here with us now. It's not that one day we will get it. No, it is here right now, but it's just all mixed together. It's all mixed together. And we see that that's how the world works. It's all mixed. So for example, you sometimes have people, they give you a gift. Or I was reading the other day of a CEO of a company who made this wall. He did his company in this way that he guaranteed everyone in the company a salary of $70,000 a year. And it was this big thing, people were so excited, but then it later became clear that this CEO was very bit obsessed with the image of being very compassionate, and that he faked a publicity stint where he made it look like his employees bought him a Tesla because they were so grateful for him. But then later some people said actually it wasn't true, he did it himself, and it just became a little weird. So the point is there, you can see how it was mixed. Yes, he gave these people a gift, but it was mixed with his own desire to become famous as someone that's such a nice person. So that's how we are in the world. It's all mixed up. We have good things, but then it's always mixed up with certain bad things. And a big part of spiritual life then is in practicing to purify desire, and to elevate it. And we do that by keeping our material desires, our material needs, as simple as possible, so that they least interfere with our natural relationships, our relationships with other spiritual practitioners, our relationship with God. And that's what we see. We see that then saintly people are so fascinating because they have, on the one hand, they've reduced their material desires, they made it very simple, and now they have so much, when you relate with them, that you can see that this person does not want anything from me, because this person does not really want much. That they have that relationship with me where I can feel that they have no desire to exploit me, because there's nothing I can give them. So if we look, for example, at Srila Prabhupada was interesting because he traveled all over the world, and later in his life he attained a lot of success. He had more than 100 temples all over the world, and technically those temples were sort of his property. Like he could do with them what they want. But then he says, he was laughing at some point, and he says it's ironic because for him, even though now he has so much, all these temples, all this property, so much money under his control, but as a sadhu, I mean, nothing has really changed because he can't do anything with that money. It's not like he's now going on holiday or eating. He just eats the same things he ate when he was living in India. He eats the same simple meals. And now he says the only thing that's increased is now he has a hassle because he has to visit all these places, to connect with all the people that are there. But his life basically is exactly the same. So, but for us, maybe we're not going to live like renunciates, but in our life, as we simplify whatever we need from the material world, then it is much easier to preserve our sincerity. And that's really what the word sincerity means. A sincere desire. When someone says, this person has a sincere desire to be a friend with me, or a sincere desire to serve me, or a sincere desire to serve God, then it means it is a desire that is not motivated by anything else. It is a desire that's simply motivated by the relationship. So, and this way then, so you spoke about the nakshatras, which again, for those you know, a term from astrology. So astrology is very much the science of understanding desire and the consequences of desire. That's really what astrology is. Astrology is nothing else. It's like the astrological chart is actually just a glimpse. It's a way to look and to see what are the desires that you cultivated in the previous life that will now bear fruit in this life. So, but all those desires that bear fruit are desires that are directed into the world and they bound us to the world. So again, all mixed up. Whereas desires in bhakti are the desires that are, as we start this process of taking our desires and pulling them out of the world, of worldly gain, worldly status, worldly identity, and we redirect them to Krishna, to God. That is the process of bhakti. And those desires, you won't read them, you won't see them in an astrological chart. Those desires are experienced, on the spiritual platform by again re-establishing that relationship with Krishna. There's a long-winded answer, but the core point is that desires are mixed and that we can again slowly purify them and in that way regain or preserve our sincerity that we have. Is that okay? Okay. Anyone else? Any others? Yes, ma'am.
Can you give a definition again about what duty is?
Duty. So duties are enjoined to us. It is certain actions that we are obliged to perform due to our responsibilities. So whenever we enter into any relationship, immediately there is duties that come because of responsibilities. So for example, the moment you have a child, then immediately there is responsibility and duty because that child is your responsibility. You have to take care of it. So the science of duty is a big thing in the Bhagavad Gita, in Vedic culture, because sometimes, interestingly enough, we enter into certain relationships and we don't really understand the duties that come with it. So there's a science also in duty. Like if we, as I'm saying, when you have a child, there's a whole bunch of things that you might not even have thought about. So I remember once someone told me that once they had a child, they started to become so much more aware of what they watch on TV. Before they never really thought about it. Now, when the kid was sitting next to them, sort of, going to watch TV with you, then you realize, well, actually, I have a responsibility to think about what I'm exposing this child to. So another example of how sometimes duties have to be clarified a bit. So we see certain of the prime duties in life are especially also related to leadership. So if you read, for example, what are the duties of leaders in the Vedic paradigm, it's actually quite severe, the responsibilities that you take up. So these are all, that's naturally then duty. So duty and in the context of this presentation, it is a limiting factor on us. Because every duty that we have, it means it's something that we have to do and that we can't do something else if we have a duty. But duties are limitations that add to our life and they actually help focus our attention and they focus our energy. And that focus is required to make something meaningful, because all things that are meaningful are the result of sustained investment of energy and time. And it is duties that direct these things. You know? So if we have spiritual duties or relationship duties, sometimes they can feel a little, it feels a little heavy, it feels like it constricts us. But at the end, that is the price we have to pay if we want to create something meaningful and something beautiful. So that's what duty. So even though it looks like a limiting factor, it actually, in the end, it leads to something more glorious than what you would have if you live a life without any duty. Anyone else? Any other questions or reflections? Yes, sir.
What are the desires of the soul like? Is it like just one desire or is it like a bunch of desires?
When we say the natural desire of the soul is to experience pleasure. So even though it looks like one desire, there's a lot in there. Pleasure is very vast. So the highest form of pleasure is not really the pleasure that is generated from the sensual experiences that we have within this world, but it is generated from the experience of different mellows, is the Sanskrit word, means rasa, which means the experiences that we have in relationship with God. So, like we know, in relationships, it's not just static. There's so many different things to experience. There's wonder, there's amusement, there's laughter, there is appreciation, there's gratitude, but it's all connected ultimately. So when the desire of the soul, its ultimate relationship that we have is a relationship with God, and then when we establish a relationship with God, it means also with all beings that are connected to God. That's what the soul really lives on. And we can see it even now. So in this world, unfortunately, what happens is that our natural desires we look for them within this world. But what you get in this world is not the same thing, but you get a reflection. So you see, if you look at what do people do in the modern world? We work for money, and then we have a place, and what do you do? After you go to your job and you come back, what do? You watch a movie, isn't it? Because really what we're looking for is ras. We want to see something wonderful. We want to see some love. We want to see some exchange of the heart. That is actually really what we want. There's other stuff we have to do because, it sucks to be hungry and it's not nice to be poor, so okay, we do these things. But at the end, really what we want is actually something in the heart. It is the heart that has to be stirred by something amazing. So that's what the soul wants. But you won't get it here. You're not going to get it on Netflix, I can promise you that. You're not going to get it on Hulu. There, it's not the real thing. It doesn't really satisfy us. It just pacifies us a bit. We can watch it and then we can go on with our life. But it's in a dynamic relationship with God. When God as a person becomes revealed to us and we start having that experience with Him, and then also our relationships, seeing the relationships we have as not relationships that are based on just the body, but it is based on in each living being there is the soul that also has a relationship with God. Then the heart becomes involved. So that's really where we can see a little indication of what the soul wants. But it takes some practice to again have those experiences. But that we can see that is the only thing for a satisfied heart. That is what the soul wants. And that's what the process of bhakti is all about establishing that relationship and then deepening those relationships. And the result is deeper and deeper experiences that come. Yes.
So one of the So one of the classes, Darshan Swami was mentioning about that the food is for the body on the material, and then for the mind or the brain or however you want to look at it is the information and jnana or knowledge. So similarly for the soul, what does it thrive on?
The soul thrives
And survives, I would say, survival.
Yeah, the soul is nourished by devotion. And devotion is practiced in this world through certain processes of worship. Worship is not just ritual. Sometimes we do it, sometimes we grow up where there's some ritual in your house. There's some things we do, rituals. We go to India. India is the land of ritual also. So people do stuff and you ask them why do you do it, they say no, we just do it like this because my grandmother used to do it like this and that's just how we do it. But we all cultures have that. We're not speaking about ritual. When we speak about worship, we speak about something that stimulates the devotion that is there in the heart. So for example, if you think about deity worship, that's what the goal is. The goal here, the goal is not to swing something or do something. The goal is not the physical action. The goal is, it is because it is worship. Then the soul is nourished because it is that act of worship that stimulates the devotion in the heart. So we say that the soul is nourished by devotional service, by actions that stimulate devotion because they are directed towards the object of our affection. And we can see that even now, we do that in all relationships. The purpose of a relationship is to serve. Because the service is what gives us the experience of devotion, of love. And we see that, Prabhupada used to give the example, that we see that if you have people who are completely alone, somehow they ended up, they don't have a family, they don't have friends, what do? At least they get a dog or a cat. You have to have some other being that you can serve, because it is only through that service that some kind of devotion is nourished in the heart. But the soul is looking for that devotion that is nourished in its relationship with God. Because it is that kind of devotion, that is the spiritual devotion that really nourishes the heart. And we do that by forms of worship, like we see in the slide. Your mind, by offering your obeisances, doing your worship, these are the things that cultivate absorption in God. And it is that absorption in Krishna that nourishes the soul. And we will experience the symptoms of that nourishment. As the soul becomes nourished, we will see that how much we expect and how much we want to take from the world, it reduces. And life becomes very simple. Most of our complexities and problems in life comes because we try to take something from the world. But the problem in the world is that the world takes also from you, isn't it? The more you want to take from the world will take from you. So as the soul becomes nourished, we become very pacified, and we start to become much more independent of what the world can offer us. And in that sense, life becomes very peaceful, and internally then, that absorption is really what nourishes the soul. Is that okay? You have another question?
Regarding timing and duties, so does timing play a role in your duties? For example, like Srila Prabhupada, if he had come to the West 20 years earlier, would it have had the same impact, or was he only successful during that period of time? And also, like another example with Krishna in his childhood when he was playing the flute, if he did it in another time period, would it have had the same impact? So isn't timing kind of important? And you're also mentioning sometimes we're lost, we don't know what we're supposed to do in our life. But then maybe 3 years later a new wave of energy comes and all of a sudden like we do something completely different that we didn't know we would have never imagined ourselves doing. So does timing play a role in what our duty is?
Timing is the results of what we do. Is to a large part, time is one of the great factors that determine the results, as they were saying. Prabhupada came to America at the right time in the right place. And then there was such an amazing result from that. And we saw the same Prabhupada in India doing the same thing, and nothing really came from it. Nothing really happened. So the time and the place, it's like a big factor in the result. But if you look at Krishna's exhortations, I also quoted this verse. He says that our duty is to perform whatever we need to do without any attachment to success or failure. Because the problem with timing is that we don't know when is the right time. You see, if you look at Prabhupada didn't wait for the right time. He just continued doing what he needed to do. regardless of whether there was success or failure. That was his part of the bargain. But Krishna is the one that ultimately controls the time. It is very difficult for us to know. So sometimes what happens to us is we think, oh, I will do it when the time is right. I understand I have a duty. I know I have a duty. I have a duty to say, I know I should, improve my meditation, or I know I should do something in this regard, or I know I should patch up my relationship with, some other person. But then we tell ourselves, well, but, the time, we have to wait for the time. I'll wait for the right time. So sometimes we have to wait for the right time, but the general attitude that we see that Krishna says is that the instant thing with duty is we have to continually perform our duty regardless of success or failure. So Prabhupada showed that very interesting. He was always writing. He started writing and he was giving it out and nothing was really happening, but he just continued to write. And they said when he came to America, once when Hayagriva, his first English editor, he gave him some things to write. And Prabhupada said, or was it Satsarup Maharaj? It is one of the two. One of Prabhupada's, I think it was Hayagriva, one of his earlier English ones. And Prabhupada he said, oh, I'll edit something for you. So then he gave him some pages and he edited it. And then he did it and then he gave it back. He says, oh, do you have anything more? And Prabhupada took him to his closet and he opened the door. And there were just these stacks of papers and his Bhagavat Gita thing that he'd written and essays that he'd written. And he was shocked. And it was amazing. Prabhupada just continued writing. He wasn't sure if it's ever going to be published or, if someone would ever read it. He didn't have the capacity to really, edit it in English. But his thing is he just continued to write. So there's that element of duty that just has to be continued, regardless of time or place or whatever. But practically, yes, timing is a massive thing. So therefore, we also understand that the results of what we are doing, the results ultimately depend on God. The result, it is not within us. We cannot force any result within this world because it's actually too many things that have to come together for specific results to happen. But our role in the process is at each and every time to think, okay, what is the best way for me to use my time right now, regardless of if it will necessarily make all difference. And Prabhupada showed that, because now we look at Prabhupada and we think, oh yeah, when you look back, you say, oh, it's obvious. He was writing like that so many years, but it's obvious because, everything was printed later and it made sense. Yeah, but it only makes sense because now you look back and it made sense. But all those years he was writing, he never knew that anything was going to happen with it. It's very difficult to continue without knowing, will someone really read it? So, we say, same with people who write, or poets. You write your poems, who knows when they're going to be read? But what's fascinating is now, sometimes we read books. You go to university, you study books, you study whatever, famous literature. The people who wrote them, they were not famous in their lifetime. They just wrote it. They have no idea that later they became studied at university and everybody writes essays on them. They just sat there and wrote it in total obscurity. They even died. So the point is that the results, we have to be careful of being motivated by results. And as you see here, Krishna says, you have to understand clearly what you're supposed to do and you just continue performing that without attachment to success or failure. Because if we're going to only be motivated by results, then our resolve will be very unsteady. And we see that manifested in anything, in relationships. If you're married, the whole point of marriage is that it's just you're there through suffering and through happiness and through misery, through wealth and through poverty. That's the whole idea with these vows, is that you're together. You can't be what they call a fair weather friend. So duty has this element of continuing through all times, regardless of whether times are good or times are bad. But results are dependent on God. Results it's not really within our control. Any other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
So, trying to think out of the word. So if you're not performing your duty, could that lead to depression and all kind of making unwise decisions and stuff like that?
Amen. The Bhagavad Gita's conception of the heavy emotions, what we call it, depression, guilt, resentment, shame, the Bhagavat Gita, nowadays, there's a school of thought that thinks that the solution to these things is either chemical, so you have the problem, if you have depression, solution, there's nothing wrong with you, you're not doing anything wrong, it's just somehow you have a genetic predisposition towards certain kinds of brain chemicals, and then that's how we can solve it. Or if you're experiencing shame, the solution is that you should just somehow convince yourself that everything is okay. Like it's called lowering the threshold of your conscience. You have certain things that are bothering you, certain things that you did, you feel bad about it, then an easy way in which you can get relief from that shame or guilt is by just convincing yourself that actually you have nothing to feel bad about. You just have to lower the threshold of your conscience. So the Bhagavad Gita's perspective is that if we want to become free from those heavy things, you have to work for it. You have to work for it. And what is amazing is that, and that is the amazing thing of spiritual life, is that at any time and place, when we start to perform these duties, when we start taking up and we start investing in them, even if we are not perfect, perfection is not that perfection is required before one becomes relieved from heaviness. Even if we just start moving in the right direction, from that, so much motivation and inspiration and support comes. Even if we're really struggling, but if we're moving in the right direction, if we're starting to perform our duties, then we will start immediately see a relax of these things. So yes, definitely. So when we don't perform our duties, when we don't understand what we're supposed to do, we do things that cause ourselves and other people suffering, naturally, because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. And also we become vulnerable. We become vulnerable to wasting. So there's a form of not doing your duty, which is like, one could say, doing the opposite. Like for example, if you're a parent, there's one way, there's like one form of neglecting your duty to your kids is if you abuse them. I mean, that's like, it's like the opposite of what you're supposed to do. So that's very visible and very destructive. But there's another form where you just neglect them. It's not that it's not like you're abusing them, you're not doing anything bad to them. You're just not doing anything with them. You're not giving them any of your time or attention. So in our life also, wasting time, even though if we're not doing something bad, but even just wasting anything, that is going to cause feelings of guilt and shame, and we're not feeling satisfied, we're feeling bad about ourselves, even though we didn't necessarily do anything bad, but we're just wasting. So we live in a culture where there's immense amounts of waste. Like these devices, the internet, I mean, it is if you just simply surf the internet for hours, even if you don't watch something bad, but you're wasting so much of your life, and the end result is that you will be definitely more prone to feel depressed. You feel like, what have I just done? What am I doing with my life? But we again and again, we take shelter of things that just distract us. So distraction and waste are also things from the Bhagavad Gita perspective that will lead us, making us prone towards depression, feeling guilty, feeling ashamed of what we're doing, because we're not investing our energy in things that build us up. So yeah, very, very good meditation. So the connection between these things and abandoning our duty. When duty is abandoned, then these things will come, they will attack us. It's like, just like if you're in this world, there's so many things, so many little viruses and bacteria that's just all over the place. Even you can wash your hands, but they're coming for you. They're like all over the place. But you have your immune system that protects you from these things. So when we abandon duty, what happens is our immune system becomes weak. And then these things like depression and anxiety, then we're much more prone to be attacked by them. But when we become more strong in performing our duty, then these things, even though they're there, and they will sometimes come for us, but we're just more resilient. And there's a big speak now in the world a lot about resilience. And we can't avoid certain things, we become resilient enough so that they don't drag us down. And duty is such a powerful thing. And what's nice about duties, certain duties can be very, very simple. Duty is interesting because sometimes people think that, I will overcome, say, if I feel depressed, I have to become a massive success and then I won't be depressed anymore. But that's like, that's a little bit, it's not so easy. But duties are oftentimes very simple things that we have to do. It's actually the simple things that make the most difference. Like, certain small things we do, like, waking up early, like eating a little healthier, making sure we come and do some service, do some meditation. It's the simple things, the simple duties that really help us quite a lot. So yeah, thank you. Very nice question. Very simple. Yes.
So it's a follow-up question on that. So usually the billionaires or the wealthiest people on the like the Musk or the Gates or the Bezos, they always calculate the results, right? Is the result reached? And the markets are such also
Yeah.
always look what's the result, what's the result. So we are giving a different perspective that we should be focused on the result. How does that match up with this wealth and wealth creation and spirituality? How much
No, definitely. I mean, when we say we're not focused on the result, it means that at the end, like, there's a certain practical level to our life, a practical level. Like, for example, if you go to work and at the end of the month your boss doesn't give you a paycheck, and then you're like, well, I guess I just shouldn't be, attached to the results. And that becomes a little practical because you're going to be a star employee because everybody will hire you because they're just not going to pay you. So that's not what we mean. The results matter. The results matter. If we cook something for Krishna, for example, and we say, oh, I'm not attached to the results, that means that, oh, I can just, it doesn't really matter what I cook or how it tastes because I'm not supposed to be attached to the results. Again, no, that's not what it means. It means that what motivates us, when we think, what should I do or what should I not do? It's not, you can't depend simply on success or failure. If you are taking care, but if you have a family to support, the results are important. You have to choose a job that gives you enough money so that you can take care of everyone. The detachment comes, man, when you take responsibility for kids. Even sometimes if your kids are not nice to you, or if your kids go through a difficult phase, then you will continue to perform your duty towards your kids, because it's not that you're going to think, oh well, what's the point? I'm spending so much time with this kid, but he's just useless, so I'm just going to throw him out of the house. That means you're attached to the results. You perform your duties only if they bring some good to you. But that's the point. It means that you perform your duties regardless of. It's not just about you. It's not just about you and what you get out of the situation. But it doesn't mean practically that we don't think what are going to be the consequences of our actions, or that we don't make our decisions based on practically what will happen. You understand that difference? It's about not being motivated by the results, not always calculating. And we get it when we come to the temple. You get the most clear experience of that when you do some service for Krishna, because you come and do service and you don't get paid. You do it. You just come because you want to give something. And that is the most practical, simplest way to experience or to practice this mentality of coming and doing your duty regardless of the result. You're just coming and you're performing that duty, and that is the motivating factor behind you, is what should be done and not necessarily what you get from it. But it takes a little while, as I'm saying. You have to always remember that if you look at spiritual philosophy and you sometimes think it's not practical, then sometimes you have to realize maybe I'm not looking at it in the right way, because it is extremely practical. It's extremely practical, but we sometimes get a little confused.
So what I delve against is the artistic part of it. For example, the artistic movie, the artist doesn't like the authors you were mentioning, right?
Yeah.
The artistic part of it and the spiritual part of it, they really don't think much about the results. They are focused in the journey part of it. Whereas on the scientific sense of it, or the really core material part of it, we really have to get the metrics of, are we getting the right results or not? Is it something like that? So that's where kind of balance.
It's a nice way of doing it. The artistic and the scientific, yes. So we have to, there's a practical level, we have to think about these things, but then there's sometimes a level where it's not, we can't be so calculating. And it's usually in our relationships that the results are not the primary concern. So we will end here. Bhagavat ki Jai. Prabhupada ki Jai.
Our last key. Thank you so much for doing such a nice talk, and we had so much time for questions. So we'll move these mats now. Everybody come forward so we can have our tea ceremony together. Thank you so much. Radhamudara ki, Gaura Chandra ki.
Stotra Shanti Sravana Shri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki
Jai.
ISKCON Samsargacharya Shri Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai Vishnupada Brahman Jai Stotra Shanti Sravana Shri Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Swami Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki
Jai.
Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Sundar Giri Govardhan ki
Jai.
Shri Vrindavan Dham ki
Jai.
Shri Mayapur Navadvitam ki
Jai.
Gangamaya ki
Jai.
Yamunamaya ki
Jai.
Bhakti Devi ki
Jai.
Srimati Tulsi Maharani ki
Jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki
Jai.
Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yogya ki
Jai.
Nitai Gaur Premanande
Haribo.
Oh Gaurisте Samavati
Hare Krishna.
Oh Gaurisте Samavati
Hare Krishna.
Oh Gaurisте Samavati
Hare Krishna.
Oh Gauristte Shri Guru Shri Gauranga Oh Gauristte Shri Prabhupada
Namaste Narasingha
before we have Prashadam. And again, just a big round of applause to thank Hari Vilas for coming and speaking. We have a really amazing program that actually just got launched. And if you're not on our temple newsletter, please get on it by going to our website and scrolling down to the bottom of the page and clicking on Join Our Temple Newsletter, because you can get all the announcements that I'm going to read to you on your phone, on your computer once a week. There's an amazing platform called Vani School, which just launched, and it's partnering with Bhakti Center. And it's an offering of annual membership of classes, courses, and community. There's amazing teachers on there like Kastuba, Janavi, Bhutabhavana, Susan, Raghunath, Doyal, Kishore. Like, there's just so many amazing teachers and so many amazing courses. So if you're interested, you can use it for yourself, but also it's a very good outreach platform for people who are new to Bhakti, to introduce them. So you can also tell them about it. And if they use Bhakti Center's promo code when signing up, which is Bhakti Center, they get 20% off. So it's a really, really, really special program. And also, if people don't want to get like an annual membership, you can also just purchase individual courses. But the annual membership gives you access to everything, all of the courses, everything. It's really amazing. And next week is June 4th. Doyle will be giving a Bhagavat Sravana next week, and then the following week, June 11th, will be by Janavi Harrison. And we have a live kirtan in the park as part of the Hare Krishna Festival, 3-day Hare Krishna Festival organized by the Brooklyn Temple, which includes Ratha Yatra on June 10th, going down 5th Avenue, and then culminating in an amazing festival in Washington Square Park. So if you haven't been to that, please come. It's very, very epic. And on Friday, which is the day before that event, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., we're going to be doing kirtan in Tompkins Square Park. Which will be just kirtan and a lunch prasadam. It'll be very, very beautiful. Please come for that. And then on Sunday, the day after Ratha Yatra, there's also an open house at the Brooklyn Temple in the afternoon. What time is that? That's
Like 12 to 12.
12 to 12. Yeah, 12 to onwards. Kirtan goes until really, really late. And we do still need volunteer opportunities for the kirtan in the park. So if you're interested in volunteering, you can go to our website, click on kirtan in the park, and then click on volunteer opportunities.
Already did.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's amazing. And then we also have a special, we have every Wednesday, we have a really beautiful program at 26 2nd Avenue, Srila Prabhupada Meditations Program. It's from 6:30 to 7:30, followed by dinner, and we meditate on Prabhupada and read about Prabhupada. And we have a special guest speaker, Mukunda Maharaj, who's going to be zooming in on June 7th to speak about Prabhupada. And then every Tuesday, we have Tuesdays with Yogi Green. Yogeshwar, who is a disciple of Prabhupada, is doing the program every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30, which is really like a conversation-based program, philosophy. Really, really good program for also new people. And then Tuesday night kirtan is followed from 7:30 to 8:30 after that. And we have spiritual care. We have a monthly series. And the next seminar is actually tomorrow from 3 to 5 p.m. here at Bhakti Center. And that is going to be on spiritual care and practice, presence versus pramada, the power of listening. That's going to be with Kula Pradeep and Dina Bandhu. So they're incredible. They're chaplains in hospitals. So if you want to come and receive that nourishment, please do. We have a couple special in-person Srimad Bhagavatam classes coming up with Vaisheshika Review on June 12th, 7:15 to 8 a.m. Chandramali Swami, June 8th, 7:15 to 8 a.m. And Janardana Swami, June 9th, 7:15 to 8 a.m. And just a couple more, we're almost there. Everyone, this is Jayanta Prabhu. He is a beloved community member, and he's also a poet. And he's also, as Hari Vilas said, Gopal and Hari Vilas and many other people's immigration lawyer. And he is going to be doing a poetry reading on June 25th, which is a Sunday, from 2 to 3:30 p.m. after Prasadam. and it's going to be really amazing. He's going to share like about 10 to 15 of his poems, and then there's going to be question and answer and the slideshow. So we're really looking forward to that. And we're also bringing back our community japa. We were doing 64 rounds days, and it's been a couple months. We're bringing it back on August 5th from 10 a.m. to 6:30. It's come and go as you please, and you can just come, chant japa. We'll do artis, and we'll also have a special lunch cooked by a beautiful volunteer, Subhadra. And that's it. Please stay. This program is run by donation, so there's ways to donate either by cash or by scanning on your phone in the back. Stay for lunch, make a friend, keep a friend, and thank you so much for being here. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.